Have I been challenged? Yes, of course I have. But actually, I'm sure that there isn't anybody that you can find that hasn't been. Where the differences lie is in the scale of the challenge and how we approach it. Having spent a career, nearly 38 years now in education, I'm going to focus on this. Nelson Mandela said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. I often use the expression that the joy of working in a university like Staffordshire is that we do transform lives, and I'm privileged to play a part in this. But around the world, 132 million girls are out of school, including 34.3 million of primary school age, 30 million of lower secondary school age, and 67.4 million of upper secondary school age. Only 66% of countries have achieved gender parity in primary education. The barriers are multi-layered. For some, it is the cultural norm, and the importance of girls being educated is still not recognised. But in many parts of the world, it's still about poverty, the lack of infrastructure, or the impact of war-torn countries, violence and deep-rooted criminality. You may be thinking there is little that you or I can do about this, although maybe some of us could #choose to challenge. But closer to home, we will all have seen the impact of COVID-19, particularly on our most deprived families. Our schools have done their best, but we know that many children have fallen behind in their education, and this will have a long-term impact. Last week in the budget, we heard reference to a commitment for funding to support women and children who have suffered from domestic violence, jeopardising their health, safety and overall well-being. The numbers have been rapidly climbing during the pandemic. The NSPCC in Stoke-on-Trent is seeking support and education for our children because of the rising problems with sexual exploitation and a growing demand for safeguarding. There's a danger that many children will drop out of education. The World Bank drew comparisons to the Ebola outbreak in West Africa in terms of the impact of a pandemic in women and girls. They said that as school closures and quarantines were enforced during the 2014 to 2016 Ebola outbreak in West Africa, women and girls experienced more sexual violence, coercion and exploitation. School closures during the Ebola outbreak were associated with an increase in teenage pregnancies. Once schools reopened, many visibly pregnant girls were banned from going back to school. Their projection is that with schools closing throughout the developing world, where stigma around teenage pregnancies prevails, we will probably see an increase in dropout rates as teenage girls become pregnant or get married. Girls stay at home during the school closures may have led to their household work burdens increasing, resulting in girls spending more time helping out at home instead of studying. This might encourage parents, particularly those putting a lower value on girls' education, to keep their daughters at home even after schools reopen. Moreover, research shows that girls risk dropping out of school when caregivers are missing from the household because they typically have to partly replace the work done by the missing caregiver, who might be away due to COVID-19 related work, illness or death. Therefore, with the current COVID-19 pandemic, we might see more girls than boys helping at home, lagging behind with studying and ultimately dropping out of school. My #choose to challenge to you is how can you help girls to access the education that they deserve and progress into fulfilling and satisfying careers? Collectively, what could we do? When I reflect on my life, I might say I was challenged, and yes, I faced barriers, but let's put it in perspective. I went to a good school. I come from a stable, white, middle-class family. When I was at school, I did well, but not brilliantly, and my choice for where I studied my A-levels was more driven by my love of sport and how I could get to play more sport. It wasn't actually a good choice in hindsight, and I didn't perform as well as I might, but I've done okay. But I've always had a support network around me, and I had social capital. Very briefly after that, I decided that university wasn't for me, and I found myself a job with a good career trajectory. It was as a legal executive and included going to college. However, I soon realised that I had made the wrong choice for me. But I had choices and could readily change my direction. I did head off to university, and I've been in education ever since. But I would not describe my journey as a pathway, but rather it was a bit like crazy paving. I started in Staffordshire as a PE and maths teacher at Longton High School in Stoke-on-Trent. I then taught in a middle school in South Staffordshire, Bilbrook, before finding myself in the university in Teesside. In this university, I had 9 roles, starting in recreation and ending as a Dean of Social Sciences and Law. As a lecturer, I taught physiology. Since then, I've been in senior management in 3 universities, but my route was not straightforward, and some of those opportunities I created by being bold and knocking on doors. I took on roles to stretch myself and open up new avenues, and I took some sideways moves. The ride wasn't quite as smooth as it sounds. I hit some hurdles, met with a few failures. But what have I learned? Firstly, you personally have to take control and make things happen. Shy bairns getting out, as my mother-in-law used to say, and something else she told me, you make your own luck. To quote J.K. Rowling in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, it is our choices, Harry, that show us what we truly are, far more than our abilities. To live is to choose, but to choose well, you must know who you are and what you stand for, where you want to go and why you want to get there. Those were some wise words from Kofi Annan from Ghana, previously Secretary of the United Nations. Of particular note is that when I needed to make key changes in my life, it was education that empowered me and provided me with the knowledge and skills to move on. I take this opportunity to remind you again of what a gift education is, and one we take for granted. I'm also clear that education and my title Professor do not make me special. I quote from one of my favourite writers, Maya Angelou, who came through considerable adversity herself. My mother said I must always be intolerant of ignorance, but be understanding of illiteracy, that some people unable to go to school were more educated and more intelligent than college professors. At a time when 726,000 fewer people are in employment as a result of COVID-19, and 3/5 of them are under 25, what can we do to support and enable them to recover and restart their lives? How can we help them to realise that challenges can be overcome and help them to face the fears they are probably facing and make sure that they are not too daunted by their future? What can we do to equip all these out of work with the skills they need? Nationally, approximately 42.5% of young people go to university. Of those on free school meals, this drops to just over 26%, and to 24% of those from a disadvantaged background. But in Staffordshire, it's even worse. About 21.5% of young people in Staffordshire and only just over 17% from Stoke go to university. #Choose to challenge. How can we make a difference and open up opportunities for all, supporting our families and working with our schools, colleges and universities? I want to talk about the importance of collaborating and working as a team. Collectively, we can make a difference. Margaret Mead, an American cultural anthropologist, said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." I'm conscious that my success is dependent on those around me. It's important that we're self-aware and recognise our own weaknesses and gaps, and that we surround ourselves by people who complement our skill set. It's also important that we show humility. We're not special because of the positions we occupy, but we are honoured and have a responsibility to deliver, and as I see it, pass on our roles, making sure that we have done the best that we can and leave having had an impact on the progress of the organisations that we have served. William Frederick Halsey Jr., who was an admiral in the United States Navy, wisely said, "There are no great people in this world, only great challenges, which ordinary people rise to meet." And for me, I gain a huge amount working in partnership to address some of our local challenges, learning so much more about our communities and our businesses, and increasing my connections and networks, recognising what we can do when we work together. Finally, as we take steps forward and achieve our ambitions, we need to open doors for those coming behind us. Far too often as people progress, they pull up the drawbridge behind them. This is where we can choose to challenge? How can we support the girls and young women who are coming behind and make sure that they have the choices and the opportunities that we have had? How can we really tackle the social mobility challenges that we face here in Staffordshire? I would like to see all of our population, from children through to our older adults, able to access education and acquire the skills they need to enable them to earn a decent living, have a satisfying job, and to live healthy and fulfilling lives. Staffordshire University will continue to work with schools and colleges and employers and to open opportunities for all to learn and progress. Together, we must all #ChooseToChallenge where there are barriers to education, to acquiring the skills and to entering careers of choice. We should commit to contribute to developing all members of our community and building the kind of society that we all wish to live in.